This is Holly Dyer's Math 5344 midterm project on rational functions. And the purpose of this GeoGebra sketch is to allow the learner to see multiple representations of the function. I have my function here. I'll be graphing it. There'll be a point that will travel all around the graph and populate the spreadsheet. And from the graphical representation as well as this data, we'll be able to make conjectures about local behavior and end behavior. And here's how my sketch works. Check box graphs the function and a point. My button will activate the point and start to produce a set of data on the spreadsheet. So I let my point travel around quite a bit so we can get lots of data to look at. There we go. Off button, and let's see what we can see. Y-intercept, could have a y-intercept here, and if I zoom in and out, I might locate one. It doesn't look like I'm going to have a y-intercept. But there's nothing happening here. That's interesting. So let's see about that gap. It looks like where x is 0, I don't have any data. Let's get really close to 0 here. Ooh, there we are. That is a huge gap in data. So I noticed that this gap in data pretty much matches that gap. So I'm going to conclude that where the x's are 0, I don't have any data for this function. Let's see. If I graph the asymptote, that confirms my findings. So the local behavior, no y-intercept, and it is undefined where x is 0. The end behavior, as x approaches negative infinity, y approaches negative infinity, and my spreadsheet confirms that. As x approaches positive infinity, never becoming 0, approaching 0, excuse me, my y's also go to positive infinity, and my spreadsheet looks like that as well. I'm going to turn f of x off, go to g of x, and that is my process. G of x produces a graph and a point on the graph. I'm going to turn point B on now and let B produce quite a bit of data where x is positive, let the x's get negative. I think we're okay. Okay, I think I'll stop my B point and take a look. It appears locally I have a y-intercept where x is 0. Let's find out where x is 0. What is y? Oh, that's pretty clear. That's nice. So I definitely have a y-intercept of 0. But what about this open space here? It looks like where x is maybe -4, -5, -3, that I'm going to have a big gap in data. So let's find, let's go around -3, -4, -5 right in here and look for some outliers. So I see a big jump in data right there where x is -4, graphing the asymptote. It'll never touch that line. The x's cannot be -4. This function is undefined at -4. My end behavior, as my x's approach negative infinity, never becoming -4, my y's approach positive infinity. As the x's approach positive infinity, approaching -4, never becoming -4, my y's approach negative infinity. I'm going to turn off g of x, turn off the asymptote, graph h of x, take a look at the spreadsheet. There we are. All right. So I'm going to turn on point C. And let's get plenty of data for point C. All right, turn point C off and let's check stuff out here. Locally, it appears we have a y-intercept right there. It's some negative fraction, so let's find out what is y when x is 0. Let's get really close to 0 here. I think that's where we're going to be. So negative half looks good. So y-intercept negative half, we've got some lack of definition here. Let's look at where x is 3 or 4 and see what we can find. Let's go the other way. I am going to need some more data for point C. I sure am. Let's turn point C back on. Because I'm looking for right around where x is 3 or 4 or 5, and so I think I'll stop there. Let's see what we have now. Let's look for outliers here in the data. It's all pretty close until we get to here, and then there's a jump, maybe right around where x is 4. I want to graph the asymptote and see what happens. Where x is 4, we have no definition. So the local behavior is a y-intercept of negative half, and this function is undefined where x is 4. End behavior, as x approaches negative infinity, getting closer to 4 and closer to 4, y goes to negative infinity. As x approaches positive infinity, getting closer and closer to 4, y approaches positive infinity. And when I examine the data in my spreadsheet, never getting to 4, we never quite get to 4, then the outputs turn the corner. Thank you for taking a look at my sketch.